Stay tuned for an updated look at the most inexpensive and effective DIY belt squat I have found. Welcome back to Home Gym Hacks and Reviews. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you like home gym hacks and gym equipment reviews. First, notice the title of this video, my favorite DIY belt squat. I don't recommend anyone do what I do. I'm just showing what I do, and if you choose to try this, do so at your own risk. Within the last year, I sold the Rogue Rhino, the Squat Max MD, the PowerTech leg press, and the Fettle Fitness pendulum squat. At the moment, the PowerTech compact leg sled is my only standalone leg machine. However, I really like to structure my push-pull legs routine with an A day and then a B day with completely different exercises. Back when I had all of the previously mentioned leg machines, that wasn't an issue. Now I'm really missing that variety in my lower body training, and until I decide on my next major leg machine, I have returned to my first major DIY, the homemade belt squat. I used this setup for about 5 years, way before I purchased any of my expensive standalone leg machines. It served me well, and it showed me the value of the belt squat exercise, but most importantly, it gave me an inexpensive, quality, lower body compound exercise that didn't require me to load my spine. I have had a history of lower back injuries from squatting and deadlifting, and so the belt squat exercise was a godsend. When I had a little extra money to spend, I upgraded from cinder blocks to 12-inch wooden plyo boxes from Titan Fitness. This gave me greater stability, depth, and more peace of mind than squatting on cinder blocks. My DIY belt squats ultimately led to me purchasing the Rhino and later the Squat Max MD. Interestingly, I sold those plyo boxes, the Rhino and the Squat Max MD, but recently regretted selling the plyo boxes because I wanted to return to my DIY setup. Unfortunately, I went to Titan's page and the plyo boxes that I previously had have doubled in price from $60 to $120 a piece, and I'm not willing to pay that much. So of course, I went to good old Amazon. And all of the decently priced plyo boxes had the same criticisms: hard to assemble and terrible hardware. Well, I wanted to find out for myself, so I went ahead and purchased the Yes For All 12 by 14 by 16 wooden plyo boxes that I'm sitting on now. I ordered these on a Sunday night and received them 2 days later. Each cost just shy of $50 for a total of just over $100 with taxes. One larger box held both plyo boxes that were shipped flat. Each box arrived in excellent condition, and each box was packed decently enough with a foam sheet surrounding all the boards. There's a pack of Phillips head screws, and a screwdriver is included. In some of the reviews I read, people mentioned the hardware was something other than a Phillips head, but luckily that wasn't the case for me. The board's finish looked clean, although these sheets of wood would not survive a well-placed crane kick. The directions are not very detailed, but it's easy enough to fit the puzzle pieces together before drilling. I was extremely impressed with the pre-drilled and countersunk holes. Once assembled, these boxes are super clean. The edges are rounded, they fit together well, assembly was super easy, and it took about 5 to 10 minutes a box. Amazingly, each box has a 450-pound weight capacity. I highly recommend a driver rather than using the included screwdriver. Initially, I was going to pass on these after I read all of the horrible reviews about them not fitting together well and the hardware breaking as it was being screwed in, but that wasn't my experience at all. These get an A+ from me. To set up this exercise, I start with my 12-inch stool. If I didn't have this, I would use cinder blocks, or there is the option to get another plyo box, but that would increase the cost of this by about $50. I then put my loading pin on, and I'll load that up normally to about 100 pounds for my first set. And I'll use my 2.5s between each bigger plate to make getting the plates on and off easier. I then use either a 25 or 35, depending on how wide of a squat I want, to help me line up the plyo boxes. So I'll put that one there and then bring in the plyo boxes. Now I want a 12-inch box height, and rather than doing it like this where it wouldn't be as stable, I turn it this way to where it's more stable. Bring in my other one. And now I take advantage of that 25-pound plate that's on the floor and add that to the loading pin. I then adjust my lever arms to setting number 7. And that's so much easier than adjusting a bar and a power rack. And I already have my oval carabiner in the 3rd D-ring closest to my hips. And by the way, an oval carabiner is so much better than the carabiner that's included with the Rhino. There are a couple of ways to do this, but I found it easiest to already have the belt and carabiner connected and then just slip into it. And from here, I push off on the arms into my standing position and push back and up ever so slightly, and then I'm ready to start my set. If I'm worried about failing, I'll raise the lever arm up a setting and lower the belt setting so that it's a little bit further away from my hips. And then if I do reach failure, it bottoms out and I can just clear from here. The Squat Max has the seat, which is helpful if I reach failure, and it does make getting into and out of the belt squat a little bit easier, but this is easy enough as I just lean forward, move the weight back to my stool, and then slide out. If I was worried about these plyo boxes rolling on me, I could get longer plyo boxes, or I could fill these up with cement, bricks, cinder blocks, sand, whatever. Seldomly is a hack or DIY as good as a standalone machine, so let's move on to the pros and cons of my belt squat. First, this is an effective setup. It's a squat without spinal loading, and because this setup is very similar to the Squat Max MD, I think it's safe to say that some of the studies that were published regarding the efficacy of the Squat Max MD will carry over to this setup. For example, it was found the Squat Max is proven to activate the lower body musculature similar to a barbell squat, and in another study, the Squat Max was shown to activate the lower body musculature better than cable and lever designs. For many years, the DIY belt squat was my only compound leg exercise, and it always served me well, and it kept me injury-free. Compared to a standalone belt squat machine, this is a very cost-effective setup. Both of these plyo boxes cost me around $100, and I already had 2 loading pins. One of them I got for about $25, and the other I got for free with Titan loyalty points when that was a thing. The Rogue multi-belt is around $100. This one came with the Rhino. But I noticed over a year ago that it was splitting at the stitching in one spot, and it seems to be more superficial than anything, but I contacted Rogue and asked for another, and they sent me a brand new one, free of charge, no questions asked. And when I sold the Rhino, I sold it with a new multi-belt that had never been used, and I've just been continuing to use that other multi-belt, and I'll keep using it for as long as it lasts. A lot of people already have a wooden plyo box, so to replicate this setup, most people would only need to buy 1 plyo box, and if you're super handy, you could probably make 2 of these for the price that I paid for these 2. Titan and plenty of other manufacturers sell loading pins for around $30. But again, a lot of people already have a loading pin, especially if they have a DIY pull down. Lastly, I don't recommend a dip belt because it won't be very comfortable and there aren't many settings. Rather, I recommend going with a true belt squat belt. Of the 2 that I had, the Rogue multi-belt and the Henny, I honestly didn't notice that big of a difference in one being more comfortable than the other. However, the Rogue is easier to clip into because of the metal rings, and the Henny has more settings, which could be beneficial depending on your height. If I was to buy one new, I'd go with the Henny because I'd rather give Brian my business because the Rogue was fashioned after his design. One last thing, this stool that I lift off of is actually an end table where I shorten the legs. So all in, this setup cost me $230 versus $1,500 for a Squat Max and nearly $2,500 for a Rhino. And yes, there are some lever arms that attach to racks, but I wouldn't touch one of those, and many of them are right around the same price as this entire setup. I love the option to start the squat from a standing position rather than a bent position like many rack-mounted lever arm belt squats. Starting from a standing position sets you up better for success. And the biggest benefit of my homemade belt squat when compared to other DIY options or even some standalone belt squat machines is a true vertical line of drive. Shear is greatly reduced, making this exercise very lower back and knee friendly. I am not connected to a fixed point, so this is a true free weight exercise. If I load the pin with 200 pounds, I'm actually lifting 200 pounds as long as I don't rely on my hands. So unlike some lever belt squats, the pin doesn't need to be loaded with 845s to feel heavy. Moving on to the cons, none of which I think are deal breakers. First off, this is top loaded, which just isn't as user friendly as horizontal weight horns. I recommend putting a 2.5 pound plate between every plate for anything over a 25, so either you need quite a few 2.5 pound plates or your grip is going to be tested if you don't have many. With the 12-inch box, ceiling height really isn't a concern. There is the option to go with a 14 or 16, but the taller it gets, the less stable it gets. Luckily, with a belt like the Henny or Rogue, I can connect the loading pin closer to my hips, unlike my first budding belt, which connected low and required higher boxes to belt squat and get a full range of motion. Next, there are only so many plates this 14-inch loading pin can hold. With 45s and no spacers, it will likely challenge the most strong people. However, with 25s and 2.5 pound spacers, the strongest of the strong are not going to be challenged. Also, Titan lists a 300 pound weight capacity for this 11 gauge steel loading pin, but I personally feel like it can handle more weight than that. In one of my old videos, it might have been my original Rhino review, I attached bands to this, but it's not the easiest or best setup, so sticking with plates is probably best. I find the biggest con with this setup is limited foot positions, which is largely why I picked the Rhino over the Squat Max. I prefer narrow stance squats, and I like the foot position I have when the pin is loaded with 25s and the boxes are closer together. However, I can max out this pin pretty easily when it's loaded with 25s, so 35s or a combination of 35s and 25s are the way I normally go, and for someone who likes a wider squat, this setup shouldn't be an issue. Lastly, for some people, stability may be a concern. I know that not everyone feels comfortable standing on 12-inch plyo boxes and performing belt squats. Also, unlike the Squat Max where the loading pin travels on a guide rod, with this setup, the loading pin has some sway, which results in less stability when squatting, so if you try this, do so at your own risk. I will say I've used this setup hundreds of times and I've only experienced two issues. Once when I was using cinder blocks, I didn't have my foot positioned correctly and the cinder block started to roll on me, and luckily I corrected myself before it was too late. And the second time I tried squatting without holding on to something, and that was nearly catastrophic, and safe to say I never tried that again. I'll mainly use the plyo boxes and loading pin for belt squats, but there are additional uses, some better than others. The plyo boxes provide a great place to perform loading pin push-ups. Yes, it's a little bit dangerous if one of my shoulders gives out, but I'm willing to take that chance and live on the edge. I really like the 45-degree grip off of the dumbbells, and getting in and out of position is easy enough. I get asked if the lever gym is a good place to perform deadlifts, and I've never been a fan. The lever arm's attachment site is too high, which makes for an awkward angle. There is the option to stand on plyo boxes, but facing towards the machine puts the bar hooks close to my head, and I don't like the weight traveling forward. Turning around is slightly better, and a neutral grip feels better than an overhand grip, but I still don't like the path of the lever arms. Adding the angles 90 grips improves the motion slightly, but not enough to make me recommend this exercise. This seal row setup isn't anything new or groundbreaking, but it is certainly an option and some added versatility from a plyo box purchase. I can switch to a different box height if I want to use 45s and or the angles 90 grips. I can't recommend lunges because the loading pin travels diagonally towards the front foot. No matter how I organize the boxes, I just couldn't find a loading pin lunge variation I want to add to my training routine. Lastly, I tried placing my calf block between the plyo boxes for calf raises, but it's not necessary. Simply using the belt squat belt and loading pin work great on their own. As long as I use a smaller diameter plate and control the movement, the plates don't bang my shins. I am really glad to have this DIY belt squat back. In my case, what's old is new, and I forgot how effective this exercise is and how well it compares to very expensive standalone machines. Yes, it does have its shortcomings, but for the price and how effective it feels, it's really hard to beat. And for anyone who's thinking about purchasing a very expensive standalone machine, this could be a good transitional step before spending thousands of dollars. Or if space is tight, this setup may be perfect because the plyo boxes can be stacked and moved into the corner when not in use and moved back in front of the lever gym, Smith machine, or squat rack when it's time to belt squat. A couple of quick updates. I'm about 2 months into my experiment of lifting almost exclusively with PowerTech products. I'm planning on giving my dad the Nautilus torso arm, and I'm also planning to give him the Nautilus bicep machine back. I am really passionate about the PowerTech brand, and I want to see what I can accomplish using only PowerTech products. PowerTech has not asked me to do this, and I am not a sponsored athlete or anything like that, but I sure would like to be. Also, I recently showed this leg extension hack in a YouTube short, but I want to include it in a long form video for anyone who didn't get a chance to see it. With almost every leg extension attachment, it's not possible to get a deep stretch because of the attachment's natural stopping point. Well, I fixed that by taking some old film I had laying around, layering it 3 inches thick at its widest point, and then wrapping it in 2-inch Gorilla Tape, and then I simply place the cover over my leg extension roller. Here is what the stretch looks like without my hack, and here is what the stretch looks like with my hack. Before, after. After I posted this, I had a couple of people reach out and say, just elevate the bench's front feet with a 2x4 or a 4x4. And I've done that, and I've shown that mainly to help people with longer legs so their legs don't drag the ground when they're doing the leg extension. But that will not improve the stretch. It will only improve the resistance profile because of the attachment's 90-degree natural stopping point. A couple of you said that I should reach out to AdMat with this hack. I did, and I haven't heard anything back. It's not the prettiest thing that I've ever done, but it is version 1. Also, while I'm thinking about it, in one of my last videos, I mentioned possibly ending my affiliations with Iron Master and Titan. I did, so now my only affiliations are with PowerTech and GymPimp. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. If you feel inclined, please use one of my affiliate links. A lot of the odds and ends I use, like the plyo boxes and the harness, can be found in my Amazon affiliate store. Take care.